Hello again, and welcome to Adventures in Book Hunting. I believe this is episode 15. Um, Before I get started into showing you literally a wall of books, I wanted to say something about book hunting in general. We've talked a lot over the course of these videos about places to hunt for books, and a few techniques. Um, I know we had one video where I emphasized the idea of enhancing and training the algorithms of your social media so that you have bookish content uh, placed, prominently in your social media feeds like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok if you use it. Um, never really dabbled in Twitter, but I assume it might work the same way. That by engaging and promoting book-related content, hopefully the social media platforms will offer more of that to you, and you'll get opportunities to hunt more books and find more books than you would have otherwise. And there was an episode of quite going on a couple of months ago now, where I found out about a private school that was shutting down and giving away a library full of books and a lot of other materials, some furniture, and those sorts of things. Found out about the day that it happened because it popped up on my Facebook feed. Uh, like I say, very fortunate. And once again, I think in part that's because I feed the beast. I tell the algorithm I like book content, so it gives me book content. Um, but another technique that I probably need to talk about a little more is the idea of being part of a book community. Of course, by now, anybody who has watched more than one or two of these videos knows that I have very good friends who run an independent bookstore selling almost entirely used books, but a few new titles. But through there and through the individuals connected to that place and other friends and family, I um, I have a lot of bookish friends in my family and friends circle, and we look out for each other. I look for books for not just the bookstore and myself, but a number of other individuals. And there are individuals out there who look for me. In fact, before I forget, a shout out. You can see I got a brand new Signet Classic of Dante's Inferno given to me by my good friend Josh, also a friend of the channel. Um, and that's an example of just a kind of an ordinary everyday kind of thing what I'm talking about. Having a bookish circle of networking and friends who love books and share books. That's a very mundane example. Um, a more extraordinary example is one that happened this week. Um, I was messaging with my friend who has the bookstore, and uh, we had one text conversation talking about potentially going to look at some books in a nearby community. And when we found out what they were, we decided, well, we'll pass because there's a lot of just general fiction that she didn't really want and that I wasn't really interested in. But then the day after that, maybe even starting that conversation, but the day after that, she told me about a local nonprofit organization that had been donated many, many, many books and had invited her to go through their collection, see if there's anything useful for her store. And of course, she told me about that. She went through it, found some really, really nice finds that will go into the Hatter Bookshop's inventory, and I think will sell well and be some good additions for customers to come in and purchase. Some really good stuff. Um, and after she'd had the first run through it, she indicated that as far as she knew, that was still going on, and it could have been easier. The nonprofit we're talking about was literally less than a 2-minute walk from her store. So I took a crack at it. I didn't have a whole lot of time one afternoon when I was there, so I just very hurriedly glanced through literally maybe as many as 20 boxes of books and grabbed a few. There were several books in clear bags, and I could see some titles I liked, so I just grabbed the books and left that day. Walked away the first day with about 20 books. Um, Only about half of I wound up being interested in. I was able to go back the next day with a little more time on my hands, did a very thorough dive through these books, and the wall of books that hopefully you saw in the thumbnail of this video were part of that result. I think by my count, I probably pulled 70 books like I said, after my friend pulled out a considerable number herself. I pulled out at least 70 more. Some of those were too damaged and just had to be thrown away. They were literally falling apart and weren't worth keeping. There were many others. Yeah, that's fair to say. Many others that neither she nor any of other my bookish friends or myself would truly be interested in. So they were still good books, and and they have audiences. They just aren't the audiences that that I'm connected to. So I kept them basically as trade goods. It's always good to have some good quality books trade for other good quality books when you're going through little free libraries. So I laid aside a few of those. And what's left? Oh, and there were a couple that I put on what I call my annex shelf, or like a reserve shelf. Um, Things that the bookstore um, might need in the future that they're stocked pretty well with now. Um, so I have a special bookshelf where I keep stuff like that. For instance, throughout the year, I collect good books related to Christmas, and so they don't want those books in their inventory year round. So early November, sometime mid-November, I will take that collection so they can put it on sale for the holiday season, sort of thing. In any event, for too much longer, I want to get into the books that have made the first round or two of culling. That I have a pretty good idea either are going to go to the store, be kept by me, or go to other folks. And I apologize in advance for the bending, but there are just so many books I don't have any place where I can readily get to them. And I'm going to try and go quicker than usual about this. I tend to blab a lot about books. It's a weakness. I just want to show you, just as quickly as I can, this extraordinary number of books I got. I think with a lot of good quality in here. First off, I'm going to do one big stack to start off so I can get it out of the way. First off, we have a stack of Rex Stout, some paperbacks that are in really good shape. I've encountered Rex Stout on several occasions, but never with paperbacks that are this good. And I also got 3 book club editions of Rex Stout. And if you not familiar with the author, he's primarily known for, and it's all I've ever seen of his work, are the Nero Wolfe books, a series of detective books set in the modern day. Imagine, if you would, if instead of Sherlock Holmes being the primary character of a series, it was his brother, um, whose name escapes me, embarrassingly enough, who was the crime solver. And instead of having Watson, you have someone else that you send out into the world to look for clues and investigate. And then the armchair detective, literally armchair detective, back in his apartment in Manhattan, gathers the information, pieces it together, and resolves the crime. Nero Wolfe is, of course, the armchair detective, gardening his flowers in his greenhouse in his downtown Manhattan apartment. And his capable assistant is, I believe, Archie Duke, who goes out into the world, spends a book of narrative gathering information, bringing it back to Nero Wolfe, and then Nero Wolfe coalesces all that. And, like I say, discovers who the villain is, resolves the crime, etc. I read a few of these over the years. There was a television adaptation that lasted less than a season on American TV, probably in the 80s. Vaguely remember it. But in any event, these are probably in a category where I will probably keep these, read some of them. If the bookstore happens to need any of them, or if they actually get a Nero Wolfe fan in, I'd be more than willing to give some or all of these up. But that's the first big stack. Get those out of the way, and we can move on to the rest. Because there's a lot of material here. Okay. Um, let's see. No big stacks. So let's just go through a few assorted books. A Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole. Uh, Popular book. It's the only book that I believe that John Toole wrote, I believe posthumously published. And this is a real nice edition. Won Pulitzer Prize. Um, a very funny book. I already have a copy, but I'm either going to keep this one and donate the other one, or vice versa. I'm very tempted to keep this one because it is such a nice little addition. Inscription as, gift back in 2001, apparently. But a very nice book. Very good book. Oh, and I will probably not pronounce the name right, but this is a classic from Modern Library. Um, Balzac's Père Goriot, I believe. I'm probably slaughtering that because French is not just not my first language, just not my second or third. But a classic novel, I believe from the 19th century. Uh, since it's Modern Library, I might keep. I don't know if I already have an edition of it. I won't keep two, but I might wind up keeping this one. Just have to see. Then I have another Modern Library with Dust Jacket still relatively intact. Um, Theodore Dreiser's Sister Carrie. I'm also pretty sure I already have a copy of this in some format. And once again, won't keep both, but we'll make a decision about which one to keep and the other to donate. This, of course, is also a Modern Library. Apparently, as you can see, book 8. Modern Library was one of, I know, as far as I know, they're still publishing. I have some Modern Libraries over on the shelf that you can't see out of sight. Um, one of the classic lines I collect, and they're still publishing. Well, I don't think they do hardbacks like this anymore. Everything I see, in the past several years, it's all paperback formats. Uh, Something I have not seen in the wild before, a novel by G.K. Chesterton, The Man Who Was Thursday, a mystery novel, which I was not aware he wrote a lot of. And I'm just passingly familiar with Chesterton. British author, straddling the 19th and 20th centuries. Um, for me, anyway, most famous for the concept of Chesterton's fence. Um, an idea about not making changes for change's sake until you understand why things are done the way they are. Chesterton's fence. If you're walking through a field or the woods and you come across a fence or a gate, don't take it down until you figure out why it's there in the first place, because you might do more harm than good. I have this one. It's a real beat up collection of stories of Scott Fitzgerald. There's F. Scott himself in Scribner's. Um, I'm sure public domain by now. I know The Great Gatsby came into public domain a few years ago. But uh, I don't know. Don't know that I will keep it. Don't even know that the store will want it because it's in really rough shape. But I'll offer it to them before I use it for trade. Okay. Here's a book I'm not familiar with. Don't know if it'll make the third round of cuts or not, but Fall on Your Knees by Anne Marie McDonald. Scribner's. Apparently she's the winner of the 1997 Commonwealth Writers' Prize for Best First Book. Don't know if it's for this or for another work, but like I say, it made the next cut. Um, got a feeling that this will probably go out as another potential donate, but like I say, I'm thinking about it. And I know I don't have a huge audience, but if anybody knows anything about this book and wants to tell me about it in the comments, it'd be greatly appreciated. A book about Vikings, and nice orange-spined penguin history imprint in fair shape. And in looking at my historical section, I looked and I realized I don't don't have a whole lot about Vikings, so I may very well keep this one. Be a nice addition to the history section. The next one is one that is actually, I might pick up two. This next one is definitely going to the Hatter. It's an omnibus of Agatha Christie, Death on the Nile, Murder on the Orient Express, The ABC Murders, Cards on the Table, and 13 at Dinner. Some of her most popular novels. I checked, and I have all of these already. Those who know me fairly well, know that I collect Agatha Christie. I collect Agatha Christie, Ian Fleming, Roald Dahl, and potentially in the future some other British authors. As part of what I call my literary preservation project, because these are all authors, including Agatha Christie, whose works are falling into the hands of creative editors who have decided that modern audiences will be harmed by her original text, and so they edit it to quote-unquote sanitize it for modern readers. I won't say what I think about that because it's kind of crude, but in any event, I collect all that I can, but I've already got all these, and this is a real nice addition that I think the store will be able to sell very quickly. So that's going to them. This is a book I already have. Cleopatra, A Life by Stacy Schiff. Stacy Schiff's an excellent writer. I've read this book and a book she wrote a few years back called Witches, about the Salem witch trials. Just such an extraordinarily good writer. A very readable narrative style. As I said, I already had one of these, so this one will be going to the Hatter. Let's see. Yeah, I think somebody's going to want to have that one, but in any event, Cleopatra. All right. Another quick stack. Stranger to Myself, apparently a soldier's memoir, a German soldier's memoir of fighting on the Eastern Front against the Russians in the Second World War. I have a nice section where I collect soldiers' memoirs, at least until I read them. I read a lot of history in general, but there's something special about these. This is, what I call boots on the ground history. The common man and his view of his or her view of a great historical event. And they only see the part of this historical event that's directly in front of them. But I think there's a lot of insight in reading their stories and, getting a feel for what it was like to live through very tumultuous times. Anyway, I'm going to keep that one, at least for now. This next one, Thread of Grace by Mary Doria Russell. I snagged this one for one reason. She also wrote a book called The Sparrow, which I would love to find in the wild. The Sparrow is a science fiction novel about first contact, and it is one of the most disturbing novels I have ever read. It made such an impact, I decided to keep this one, at least for a little while, to investigate it. This apparently is fiction set in the Second World War in Europe. But, like I said, I don't know if impressed is the word, but so stunned by The Sparrow. I definitely want to check it out. I also found this, a really nice anthology of short fiction by Kurt Vonnegut. There's Kurt staring at the ocean. A Man Without a Country. Was not familiar with this at all. It's got neat little quirky things in it. These inset pages that you find in Vonnegut. Okay. May keep, may donate. I want to do a little more research on this particular book, but it's like I say, I have an uneven opinion of Vonnegut. Really like some of his stuff, and other stuff's kind of like meh. But like I said, check this out. May or may not keep it, but like I said, it's worth investigating. Here's one that I almost will certainly keep, and this is a nice hardback from Everyman Library, George Eliot's Adam Mead. And this will go on my pretty bookshelf, which I can see, but you can't. It's a nice quality book. of a lesser known work from this author, but like I say, I'm a sucker for classics. I'm sure I will keep this one. All right. Let's see if we can zip through some others real quick. Russia and the West by George Kennan. George Kennan was ambassador to the Soviet Union during a large chunk of the Cold War, was one of the true Cold Warriors of his time. And this little uh, oh, political analysis he had of the Soviet system and the Soviet government should be pretty insightful. Like I say, he's high-level foot soldier in the Cold War. Uh, Now, this was published, I believe, in the early 60s, so it's obviously very, very dated. It's older than me. Uh, but I kind of like looking at this kind of stuff. We have the benefit of having a much longer view about how all this played out. And of course, this is 30, well, going on 30 years before the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviet system collapsed. Um, it's always kind of interesting to see what their speculations are, how the people at the time thought it was going to turn out. And because we have the benefit of having lived through it, so we know how it turned out. But it's always interesting to see what they thought was going to happen and why. Let's see. Oh, a mentor. I've been looking for some mentors for an idea I had, but this is Women in Fiction, a collection of 26 short stories written by women. Authors like Karen Mansfield, Edith Wharton, Willa Cather, Gertrude Stein, Virginia Woolf, uh, Carson McCullers, Joyce Carol Oates. I mean, some luminaries of women's literature. I actually found two of these. One I will keep, one I will donate. But no, certainly a good addition. I don't. It's not a mentor classic. It's just a regular mentor. I'm on the look for a mentor classic. I've had them before. I had one of Machiavelli's The Prince. I need it as a prop, so it's something I'm on the look for, so I can do a video about actually Signet classics. That's for another day. Have a nice little vintage copy of John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. I've already got a copy, so either this one or that copy will go to the store. This is an old Bantam classic. It only costs 60 cents, so you know it's ancient. But a great work. One of Steinbeck's more successful ones, I think. We have another Steinbeck, one I'd never heard of before. The Moon is Down, in what's called a Bantam Pathfinder edition, which I'm not terribly familiar with. As you can see, there's some German soldiers on the front cover, and it's the story about the town during German occupation in the Second World War and how they resisted that occupation. We'll keep it at least for a little while. Very interesting looking. Next, I've got two, speaking of Signet classics, I got two very old Signet classics. Henry James's The Wings of the Dove. Okay, you can see at the top the little Signet Classics logo. And this one is absolutely ancient. This is from the original Signet Classic line. In fact, if you look at the spine, there's no publisher information. So this one's easy to miss. Of course, Lord Jim by Joseph Conrad. This is number 51 in the original Signet Classic line. So this was the 51st book published when it was a series rather than a publishing imprint. I'm almost, but not. I would be shocked if I don't already have a copy of Lord Jim. And like I say, because I'm trying to be a reformed book dragon, I'll only keep one, but I'm going to be tempted to keep this one because it's a very old vintage Signet classic. But interesting art, and that's the art that you'll see in a lot of the old Signet classics. This kind of style. They probably had. Maybe I have another one from the same era with a very similar artistic style. Like I say, maybe perhaps even the same artist. I need to compare. Here's one of local interest: "Storming Heaven" by Denise Gardenia. She is local. This is a fictional account of some of the strife in the mine wars, and in part tells the story of the Battle of Blair Mountain, which was, I think, probably still to this day, the largest civil insurrection in the United States post-Civil War, where several thousand unemployed pro-union in the sense of organized labor miners struck back against the American Army and probably West Virginia National Guard. Um, like I say, it's unless you're a West Virginian and you took West Virginia history in school, and even that's not a guarantee because I didn't learn about it in West Virginia history. Have a lot of gripes about that. But in any event, this is, like I said, more of a local interest kind of thing. In fact, I don't know if it's in this stack or in something else I've already gathered, but I believe it was maybe a haul I made last week. Found another one of her novels, but like I said, she's local. She's from the area. This would be a nice addition to their local history section, and it's a good book. Another classic, modern classic, Stranger by Camus. I read The Stranger and I read The Plague for something to do during COVID, ironically enough. Uh, yeah, absurdist writer, but like I say, he's well worth reading, and I'm sure I already have a copy of The Stranger, so that one will definitely go to the store. Oh golly, let's go. Oh yeah, let's get this stack. Some vintage hardbacks. As far as money goes, this is probably the find of the haul. First edition, although later printing of The Pearl by John Steinbeck. It's in okay shape. There's Mr. Steinbeck again. It's like the third one in this haul. Um, he of course is probably best known. Well, we've already seen of Mice and Men. Um, oh, what else? East of Eden, The Grapes of Wrath. Uh, I snagged this one. Well, probably would snagged anyway, but I thought, well, this cover and apparent age, this might be a first edition, and it is. And I did just some quick research, and first editions of this book, unsigned, well, let's just say first editions, are going anywhere from $10 to over 1,000. I tend to think this one will stray closer to the $10 mark, but still there might be some value here, and so definitely got to keep it. There's a very nice copy, older copy, but a very nice copy of Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea. There's Mr. Hemingway. Got to keep that. Just a beautiful book. It's an older publication date. Yeah, I don't think this is a first printing. Yeah, this is originally published in 1952. This was one 1960. So it's just a beautiful book. I already have The Old Man and the Sea, so it'll be a donate. Here's two that kind of went together. I kind of think probably the same person donated it. You've got Charles Lindbergh's memoir about his life and his first transatlantic crossing by air back in the 20s, and his wife's memoir, Gift from the Sea by Anne Morrow Lindbergh. Next one's one I will almost certainly keep. A very nice book club edition of The Source by James Michener. Actually, I already own this in a paperback, but I like this one better. It's in better shape, actually. This was the second Michener novel I ever read, the first being Centennial. When I was, what we now call middle school, early high school, I read a lot of Michener. I really like the things he did with historical fiction. This one is set in a small village in what's now northern Israel, and you go from prehistory to 1960s, covering that same stretch of ground through all the tumult of literally millennia of history. Wonderful book. And we are getting closer to the end, I hope. Here are a couple of books I don't know anything about. The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa. I kind of snagged it because it's got French flaps and deckled edges. Don't know that it's going to survive the next cut. Here's a novel called Lying Awake by Mark Salzman. Know nothing about it. Haven't researched it yet. Apparently he's an award-winning author. Snagged it for now. No, I won't keep it myself. And if the bookstore doesn't want it, it'll probably get donated someplace else. This was an interesting, The Sunday Philosophy Club by Alexander McCall Smith. Most famous for a series of detective agencies set in Africa, the number one ladies detective agency. There's probably dozens of those. But this is a mystery. It says a Isabel Dalhousie mystery. Didn't know he did mystery fiction, although I guess the number one detective agency books are somewhat in that vein. But in any event, I don't know that I will keep it. But it's a good looking book. I probably need to read some because I'm coming across him more and more in my travels. This next one I'll probably keep for a little while. Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, who wrote The Remains of the Day, probably the one he's most famous for. I read Remains of the Day last year. Was really moved by it. We'll keep this a little while, may read it, have every intention to. Hopefully I will. All right, I'm running out of room. Almost running out of books, thank goodness. This one I'm very likely to keep. It's a compendium of the writings, religious and literary, of C.S. Lewis. Just a broad spectrum of stuff. One of the Narnia novels is in here. One of his Palandra novels is in here. Screwtape Letters is in here. Letters, essays. Mere Christianity is in here. Some of his poetry. But yeah, this is a nice one-stop shop for Lewis's literature. So I feel like I'm probably going to keep it, unless somebody asks real nice. And then I might donate it. All right, I'm going to skip over. Well, maybe not. We'll cover these. I found another Albert Camus, one I've never heard of before. Apparently, it's his last novel. Of course, he's a Nobel Prize winner, so I snag him wherever I can. Not familiar with this one at all. Might keep it. Might donate it. Like I said, I like Camus, so could very well wind up reading it before I donate. Got this because it's local interest. It's a book on country inns in Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia. Just glanced through it. Primarily because I want to see if I can find some of the local inns I know about in here. Don't know that I'll keep this forever. I think the bookstore might take this because it's something that has some local interest. Oh, and it was previously owned, if you can see the signature, by William, if you can read that signature on the cover, William Sanders, who was a local attorney who's passed away. So he or his family donated it some time ago. The next one is Russian literature, Dostoevsky, Memoirs from the House of the Dead. In a book club edition, I've got a ton of Dostoevsky. For me, Dostoevsky is most famous for being a book I lied about reading. I lied about reading Crime and Punishment. I need to get around to it someday. Too many people whose tastes I respect and opinions I respect say it's one of the great works of fiction. I'll just have to buckle down and try it again. But we'll probably keep this one for a little while because, like I said, I've got a nice collection of Dostoevsky going, just in case kind of stuff. Like I said, I've never heard of this one before. All right. I am going to skip one. Oh, yes, the end draws nigh. Okay. Collection, an anthology of Carl Sandburg's called Harvest Poems from 1910 to 1960. And I don't know if that's Harvest the publisher. That's why it's the Harvest Poems. But in any event, collection of his poetry. May very well keep this one. Probably will. It's the kind of thing I tend to collect these days. Literary fiction, classics, those kinds of things. This is most certainly going to go out the door. I already have a copy of Master and Commander by Patrick O'Brien, part of a long-running series about Jack Aubrey and his very best friend, the ship surgeon, Stephen Matron, set in the Napoleonic era, and adapted as a very fine film starring Russell Crowe. Excellent movie. And an excellent adaptation of this book. In any event, I already have one, so it's going to get donated. Next are two I'm going to keep. Once again, part of my ongoing literary preservation project. This one, Agatha Christie's Lord Edward Dies, I did not have, so it's one I can strike from my list. This one I had, but I had it in a very abused mass market paperback, so this replaces that one. And it's a Barnes & Noble. So, I'll hold on to that one. Once again, I'm always on the hunt for Agatha Christie published before, say, 2020. That's my rule of thumb. After that, you're not getting Agatha Christie. You're getting her creative editors. And last, in one fell swoop, someone, I bet it was one person, donated a stack of novels by Jacqueline Winspear. Apparently, they all look like they are Macy Dobbs novels. So I think historical mystery. Grabbed them because they were in great shape and I'd never heard of them before. Doubt very seriously I'll keep them forever, but I want to check them out a little bit before I offer them to the Hatter or to someone else. But that's the end of this wall. If I figured out how to do thumbnails correctly, the thumbnail should demonstrate the full glory of this great wall of books that I got. As far as volume of books, number of books, this is by far the biggest haul I had this year. I can only think of one historically that might rival it. There was a local library that was shutting down and moving locations and severely downsizing. And I probably got as many books from that downsize as you see here. But the difference there was I paid like 10 cents a piece for those books, and these were all perfectly free. This great big wall of books was free. And as you can see, there's some value in here. And circling back to what I was talking about in the beginning, would not have known about it, would have missed this wonderful opportunity had it not been for a very good friend who shares my very bookish interests and got alerted to this in a timely fashion. The nonprofit who was giving these books away just because they just couldn't handle it anymore. I know in the past they've tried to do yard sales where they'll sell books, but I think this is overwhelmed by the volume. But anyway, I checked it out again yesterday evening, and they've done something with all the books that remained. And all the books that remained had already been gone through once by the store owner from Hatter, and twice by me. And actually, when I left the second time, there was a gentleman who's coming to look. So they were picked through pretty well. By the time yesterday rolled around, they probably hauled them off. I hope they found somebody to give them to. There's some stuff that I'm sure would have been useful to someone, just not to me or anybody I know. But I hope they found new homes as opposed to just being landfilled. That's the hope, anyway. You hate to see books go to waste, even if it's a book that you don't really want. Anyway, I think I will wrap it up then. This has got to be my longest video, and I'm a little bit shocked I covered so many books and actually in so short a time. But anyway, thank you for bearing with me. If you made it all the way to the end, bless you, and I will talk to you again soon. Thank you.